And what we're going to do is we're going to go from line to full render. Okay. So let's look at this. If anybody's been in Photoshop or InDesign or any of that stuff, this should look familiar. Okay. So I open this up. I've got multiple ways to open a file. I can go file, new. I can drag it onto my Illustrator icon here, or I can double click it and it should actually open it. If it's a vector file, it should actually open it in Illustrator. Okay. So I'm going to go right here and go create new. And then it gives me all these up here, just like in Photoshop, of different categories: print, web, film and video. I use a film and video all the time. If I go here, and here's standard HDTV. Well, this is standard 1080. There's also 4K and all that, but I use 1080 a lot. And what I like about this is if I go in here, I know that this is going to drop into my Premiere file at the right size. It's not going to be too big or too small. I don't care if it's too big, but I don't want it to be too small. And by the way, you can see we have a transparent desktop here. I don't particularly care for that. We'll talk about that later. So I'm going to go create new. I'm going to go to print. And I'm going to go to tabloid. And then over here, I've got, just like you do in Photoshop, I've got points, picas, inches. I don't know who the hell's using picas anymore. You know, millimeters, centimeters, and pixels. Okay, so you can set this up pixel wide and all that stuff if that's the measurement you have. I'm going to go to inches, and then I'm going to put it landscape, which is right here. And then this artboards for now, just ignore it. We'll go over that later. We can do multiple artboards in here. And here's the height and width. This we'll talk about a little bit later. And then that's fine. I'm going to go create. And now we've got our artboard. Make sense? Now, you got a black and a white arrow tool. And by the way, I'm going to put all this on YouTube right after we're done. So you don't have to take notes or anything. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to kind of run through today because I'm just going through an overview. So don't worry about like, am I supposed to remember in all this? You'll work with these tools and it'll be fine. Right? Kayla.
Yeah.
You comfortable?
I am.
Okay. You might want to go through if you've got a simple drawing, because I know you do a lot of character stuff and all that stuff. If you want to find one while we're doing this class and bring it up and go, I might want to do this. That's fine.
Oh,
you don't have to do this image that I gave you. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. Okay.
But don't pick something crazy complex. Just like a simple. If you want to do that, you could use this too. I don't care. And if anybody's like a more advanced, they have some really cool drawings. The problem that I always have is people go, well, I want to use my character design thing from character design. I go, it's all off balance and it's stiff and it's just not a very interesting drawing. Okay. But if it's like a nice drawing, then that's cool. And what's cool to do about it with your own thing is that you'll end up with a really, really nice ink drawing. Does that make sense? Okay. By the way, Illustrator is really good for that. For like if you're going to do this kind of stuff, hang on. Especially this kind of stuff. This kind of real vectory simplified kind of stuff. Does that make sense? And we're going to go through after we do this whole ink thing, we're going to go through how to just do shape without line. Okay. And then we'll be ready to do a project. Okay. This kind of thing. This totally. You want to do that kind of thing. The nice thing about it is that obviously you can go through, usually when you're, when you used to ink by it with a brush and all that stuff, and still you do sometimes, you know, you got to be really careful in there and all that kind of stuff. And if you make a mistake, you got to go in the white out and clean it up. It's just not efficient if you're doing commercial work and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Or this guy, this is another guy I like for this kind of simplified cartoony stuff. Right? This guy, by the way, is a really monster designer. Like his stuff is super simple, but it's just great. He did the banana splits. Right? Does that make sense? The other thing that's nice about this, and this will make more sense later, like when I was doing toy design, I would do my, sometimes I take my sketches, I clean them up in Illustrator like this. I could do it really fast. I put a layer behind it, put all my color call outs and all my PMS colors up here. And if they click the file, if they click the color or something, boom, the PMS color matching system would come up and tell them exactly what color they're supposed to use. So it stays active. Does that make sense? And factories love that. Okay. And factories, even a lot of factories, they like vector for just certain things. Okay. Like I can send them a continuous tone image, like a photograph, and they'll come back and go, can you give me an EPS file? And I'm like, it's a continuous tone image. It's a raster image. I can't, you know, I can't send you a vector file of that. They love vector files. Okay. And then this guy did this book that I really love. And the only reason I'm showing this is because how simplified the language is, which I really love. So you can see how simplified that language is, right? But it's really smart. It's a really cool book too, by the way.
Super cute.
Yeah, look at these trees in the background, right? Totally easy to do in Illustrator. I actually copied all this for Frank. I have it somewhere because he wants to animate it in InDesign or After Effects or whatever. So this way he can, we talked about this. This makes it very easy because I broke it into layers and I recreated all this imagery. You know, he can move the arms around. He can start animating it. It's something you guys want to think about. I think it's a skill set you really need to have nowadays. Okay. Look at this one. And then look at what I talked about before. Watch. Look at these trees, right? See how he's reusing the assets in the background of this one? It's a really cool book, by the way. He's using the trees again in the background. See that? You don't have to redraw it, all of it. There they are again. But notice what he's doing. Now they're monochromatic. And then more of a full render here. And then look at the background here. He goes from color to transparent, and the background is just a big, simple silhouette, right? We want to think like that. Okay. Now you can take it wherever you want, but you want to think like that. That's smart design. And Illustrator is great for smart design. Okay. And the story in this thing is really good too, by the way. Where's this one? Okay. Okay, so we have our black arrow tool and our white arrow tool, direct selection tool, selection tool. If I make a shape and I grab it with my black arrow tool, it's going to grab the whole shape. Does that make sense? If I want to manipulate it, and you can see it has these points in it. Look. There's the points, boom, boom. They're just on the corners. I'm going to make sure I'm recording. I'm recording, right? Is anybody seeing it? Yeah, it is. Okay. So if I want to manipulate this, then I would go over here and here's another thing you got to do. Like if I just go over here and I have this selected, I don't think it'll do it. If I have the white arrow tool, it's still selecting the whole thing because see all the points are already selected. Okay. So what I'm going to do is like click off of it. Then if I click back on it, see how they're white now? Can you guys see that? Let's go bigger. Now I can come in here and I can manipulate this. Does that make sense? Now down here, if you've been in Photoshop, you normally have your foreground and background swatch. Now we have shape, fill, and line. Okay. So if I want to come up and change this color, I'm going to come up here. And by the way, I'll get in that in a minute. If I want to come up here and change this color, I come into my swatches or whatever and pick one. Okay. Very simple. Now, if I want to change the path color, I come in here, or I can just hit this little none and just get rid of it if I want to do that. Okay. So your foreground and background swatch now act as a line and a fill. Okay. If I don't want this to be filled, pull this forward, click that, and it doesn't have a fill anymore. Does that make sense?
You cut off a bit. It switched to your like speakers. And
Do what?
headphones. It's switching between your speakers and headphones.
I don't have
audio.
headphones on.
But it keeps saying it on the screen.
Oh, but I mean, it doesn't affect my sound, right?
It kind of cut off.
Am I doing that with anybody else? Okay, it's on your end.
My bad.
Huh?
My bad.
Sound like you're on a radio. Okay. Okay, so if I have a round or an oblong or whatever, an organic shape, let's get rid of this fill because it's confusing. And I go now, if I same thing. So if I go and I click kind of just not where the points are, and I just kind of drag over it, say I get my handles, right? So I can go boom, and I can get my handles, and now I can manipulate it this way, or I can grab a point, pull it out, reshape. And all that. Make sense? So this one, if I go back to my black arrow tool, it's just going to move the whole thing. The other one, white arrow tool, I can manipulate things. And if you kind of think about it, the white arrow tool is hollow, and you want your points to be hollow if they're going to be active. Okay. If they're dark, they're not active. We don't care about this yet. We don't care about that yet. Here's your pin tool, which we're going to start with today. So make a point. Now, here's the thing with the pin tool, and I'm going to show you some things in a minute with it. If you're going to make a curve, you want to put a point down, drag over to wherever you're going, and pull and make your curve. Does that make sense? What people do is they go point, and then they try and drag it over. You want to go point, click on the next part, click on the next part, however you're going to do it. And we'll get more into this in a minute. So when you're making a curve, that's what you want to do. If you're doing a straight, you can just click straight and just make geometric shapes. Here's the line tool. I never use it. We'll get into some of these a little bit later, but these are sort of standard shapes. So I'm going to go to spiral. That's one we'll probably use a lot. And if I just drag it, it gives me a spiral. Okay. But if I double click this, and you're going to see this on most of your tools in here, if I double click the actual, and then if you have this little arrow right here in the corner, I can click it and there's more tools in there. Okay. So I'm going to go, if I double click this tool, oh, it showed up over here. Hang on. Oh, no, it didn't. Hang on. For some reason this isn't showing up. Hang on. Oh, it's doing it this way. Okay, so if I just go and I don't drag it, if I just click on the, usually you double click them. If I just click on the board, it'll give me this, which goes, how many segments do I want? Do I want to flip it? you know, just the parameters around that particular tool. Okay, so if I go, let's put 79 sections, it'll just manipulate how tight it is. Okay. Your brush tool, self-explanatory. It's going to make a vector line like that. And we'll be able to come in here, and I'll talk about this a little more later, and use another tool to go and smooth it out. Okay, so it creates a vector line. Just remember that, okay? Which means it's resolution independent, which is great. So there's our, now we can worry about the blob brush. I think it's kind of a stupid tool anyway. Here's our type tool. Just select that, click on here. I get my type. I'm going to shift, drag it, make it bigger. I can select it. I can change my type. I can go and I can change it up here, make it more interesting. Those are dingbats. And then one thing I want to say, oh, up here, you guys, you've got your control bar up in there here on the top. Do you see that? That's going to give you all, when you click a tool, so watch, let's click a different tool. Let's click eraser. And, oh, no, wait, I'm on type. Any of these tools that I click, it'll give me my most common things up on the top, and it'll just shift per tool. If you need to go more in depth into a tool, again, it's like Photoshop. All your palettes live under window. So if you go, I need to go into my type palette to manipulate this, you'd come down here to character or whatever it is. I have it over here. Okay. And then I'll get more, a lot more parameters around the tools. Okay. But your go-tos will be up here. Right up here, you can see there's the stroke, and these things correlate up into here with individual tools. Like here's stroke right here. Okay, if you want to pull up the palette on it. Okay. And if you ever lose that control bar, you can go to Window, right here, Control, and it'll come back up. Sometimes it'll disappear. I don't know why. Oh, and with type, you can also do this. So let's make a path. That's weird. Hang on. I don't know what that is. I'm going to make a path. And then there's another tool here. If I click and hold this, it'll go type on a path, and I can just come here. What you can see that little curve, it'll change. Watch. Oh, it didn't. You don't have to anymore, I guess. Okay, so then I'm going to go here. It'll put it on the path. And then let's go make it bigger. So I can get it to follow that path. Make sense? So, you know, everybody uses it for this. There they go. This is, I clicked inside, but the tool's right here. So let's do it this way. Let's pick a more interesting shape. So if you look at this one we just talked about, where you can make just simple shapes with your rectangle marquee tools, but also in here they have this star tool. You can use any shape, it doesn't matter. And then I'm going to go here, click out, and go area type tool. And I'm just going to click like kind of inside. Oops, I have to click on the path. And it'll just fill that shape based on what the shape is. Okay, this one doesn't fit in there that good, but that's fine. Let's make it smaller, actually. Hang on, let me do this. Let's get rid of this fill, and let's just make it a line. And by the way, you can just go X, and you can toggle back, and if you hit just X by itself, you can toggle back and forth between line and fill. And then I'm going to take my scissors and just cut this section out. So I just clipped it I'm going to take my white arrow tool. Just select that little section. And I can just clip it. Okay. This is just your scale tool. So I double click it. I can go here and go uniform here and take it down in percentage. And here's something you got to remember, you guys. Make sure when you first start using this that you go to your scale tool, double click it, and make sure it says scale strokes and effects. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is, like, let's say you got a really nice thin, thick line on there, or any line. When you shrink it down, those lines are going to stay the same thickness. So you can shrink it down this small. Now the line's like this fat. So if you hit that, and it'll just stay on. Usually once you do it, it's probably already on. When you scale it down, everything will scale down together proportionally. Does that make sense?
I have a question about the scale.
Sure.
Let's say I want to scale something to an actual dimension, like I want my rectangle to be 2 inches by 2 inches. Can I do that?
You don't need the scale tool for that. You should be able to go. And here's your height and width.
Okay. Thank you.
So what I did is I just hit this, double clicked it. Or see, some of these, it's weird. These used to all be you double click it, but some of them you just go, if it doesn't double click, oh, it's probably because it has stuff on it. You can just click once on the desktop and it brings it up. Okay. And then you can just dial it in. By the way, under view, I think it is, there's rulers. You guys see that right there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for all your tools, and this is in most programs, if you look to the right here, it shows your hotkeys, right?
Yes.
Okay, so just remember rulers is an easy one because it's R, and you just go Command R, and see how the rulers just came up right here? There's a trick here because, like, if I click, sometimes you'll come in here, and I don't know why, but Illustrator will default sometimes to like picas, and I'm like, who the hell's using picas? You know what I mean? But I can click it here, and I get this, and see how it says inches? Sometimes it'll say something weird, points, picas, whatever. If I right click this or control click the ruler tab or ruler bar, it'll give me my choices right here. It's a shortcut. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having to go into preferences or whatever it is and change it, you just right click it. Okay. This little, okay, so it's gonna, this little toolbox right here, obviously it has all these tools. And by the way, if I click on the bar over here, it dislodges that tool from there. It still stays there, and it gives me all the tools here on a palette in case I'm using, we'll be using that later. Okay. So this little bar right here, it always starts with this shaper tool, which I don't use. Now, every time I go, I think that tool's stupid, I can probably go on YouTube and find some kid who's doing monster cool stuff with it. It's worth, so I usually do actually, because I do want to show you. I don't want to just take it on what I like to use and teach you guys what I like to use. I go through these things. And I always like seeing what people do with it. And you go, why didn't you think of that? Why didn't I think of that? I don't use this so much. We'll talk about this later. Here's your pencil tool. I just think it's weird that they lead with the shaper tool. It's just not that, I don't use it that much. And then you have your pencil tool, which is just that, it's a pencil. And then you have your smooth tool, which is awesome. That's a great tool. We'll be using it today, okay? When you put a line down and it's got kinks and bumps in it, you can just go through there and smooth it out with that tool, okay? I don't care about path eraser tool. That's because the eraser tool doesn't erase the path. It does weird stuff to it. I'll show you later. And this we'll talk about later. There's your scissors. There's your eraser, your knife. Don't worry about that too much. This one right here is your, here, let's put a, now what's kind of weird about it is if you look at, if I hover, I'm on the black arrow tool. If I hover over the corner, see how it gives me that little arrow, right? Which means I can do that. But I can come in here and grab the rotate tool. And you probably go, well, what do you need it for then? You need it because it pops. See that there's a little anchor in here? See that? You guys see it, right? Okay, so it's going to default to the middle and I can spin it just like I could with without using this. But I can move this point, let's put it here. And now it's going to rotate around whatever point I put it on. Okay. So that's the difference. Here you have the reflect tool really, okay. The way you're going to learn to build imagery in Illustrator, it's going to be very different than how you build it like drawing or in Photoshop. It's going to be very shape oriented, very using this shape to punch that shape, to do this shape, to reflect this shape, to do this. And that's how you get like that guy I was showing you the other day, that Matt Taylor guy, where he's doing like, he'll have like somebody's, you know, some really cool portrait he did, and then all this really elaborate, maybe Art Nouveau looking stuff around it. He made one side and then he just mirrored the whole thing. He made the top and then mirrored the bottom. So now he's got a really elaborate looking thing that probably took him a half hour. Okay. So if I put a shape in here, let's just make one. Let's say I go, well, let's do that. Let's do this. And let's say that I go, this is going to be the beginning of some face I'm going to do. Now I probably have to, and by the way, these rulers right here, I can come up here and I can grab a guide. Okay. So I'm just going to activate this. I'm going to grab, and you can grab them from the front, the top or the back or the side here. I'm just going to put it right there. And I'm just going to make sure that this shape ends right here. I'm going to pull it out a little bit. Then I'm going to go to my reflect tool right here. I'm going to click on this point, and then I'm going to option drag it, and it'll just duplicate it around. I'm a little bit off in my thing. And then in theory, I could get my white arrow tool and join these points. This one's off, but it's fine.
So when you tried to get your shape to terminate on those guidelines, can you snap it to the guideline, or do you just have to eye it?
No, you can go up here and go wherever it is, snap to guide. There's a snap to grid, snap to guide, whatever it guides right here, right? And yeah, it'll snap to that. I'm just doing it quickly, so I'm not, you know, sitting here fooling around with it forever. So that's that one. There's your scale tool. Your shear tool. If I put a shape here, I go to my shear tool. Click again, you have an anchor point right here, so you have to establish that anchor point. So I'm going to put it here. And then I'm just going to grab this, and it just, you know, however you want to do it. I use this a lot for cast shadows, where I'll just make the exact shape of the person or whatever it is. I'll make a copy of it. I'll fill it with a gray. I'll put that anchor point down, and I'll put a cast shadow off of that person or a building or whatever it is. This is your perspective tool. That's a whole other animal. We'll do one project on it, and then we'll be off on it. I rarely use it. It actually, to me, is probably better for like graphic design and things like that. This is your width tool, another tool that I love, which is going to be, I can grab my width tool. I think I talked about this the other day, and I can create my whatever type of thin, thick line I want to create. I'm in love with that tool. Okay, between that and the smooth tool, I'm in love with that. I'm in love with Illustrator, period. I love Illustrator. Just so you know. Okay, here's your, this is your mesh tool. We'll get into that later. It's its own animal. Here's your gradient tool. We'll get into this next week a little bit. But if I make a, you know, I don't have to make a shape, but I want to make a shape. Click my gradient tool. And I'm just going to do a default fill, which is usually what I start with, which is black to white. Oh, and look, I'm on, the reason it's not filling is I'm on line. See how it applied that to my line? You guys see that? So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to pull this forward, do it again, and go fill it with that. And then you get this line, right? So if I go, I'm going to hold shift just to keep it straight. And I go like that, it gives me this bar, okay, which I can go, I can sort of pull the fade with this, or I can pull the actual gradient itself with this, I can click, you guys all know option drag, right? That just creates a copy, right? So I can option drag this point and create another point, double click it. I get two options. I get my swatch option, or I get my color option. So I'm going to just pick a red or something. Now I've got that. I can go back to this. I can go, well, I don't want it there. I want this to fade out. I don't like how hard that edge is right there. So I could pull this down a little bit, make it a little softer. I can pull this down a little bit, make it a little softer. You know, I can pull it this way and pull it this way, so on and so forth. And I can dial all that in. And if you look over here in my palette, it's giving me the same thing as my gradient bar right here, but over here. Okay. And then we've got some other things here, types of gradients. There's a round one. This one's not going, there it goes. One fading out from the thing, so on and so forth. Okay, we'll get into like what we can do with that later on and how we can create a crazy gradient mesh kind of thing, right? I'm going to jump over to the gradient mesh thing pretty quickly. I used to spend more time on it. I just want you to know how to use it. People do stuff like this with it, which I think is kind of weird, to be honest. Hang on. So this is vector. Okay. Megan's mouth's hanging open. Yes, you can do this in Illustrator. And here's you have this thing here that's called preview. It's up here. View using no, it's right here, outline. So I think I was showing you this the other day. If you look at it, if you look at whatever I'm creating, if I go Command Y, which is view outline, right? If I go Command Y, see how it shows me my line work, right? So if you look at the line work, and they did this with a gradient, it's called a gradient mesh. If you look at the line work, oops, on this, it's this. Does that make sense? So what you're doing is you're creating a grid. Let me show you real quick. I mean, I think
It's
I
like
can
a
just.
mesh.
What you're doing is creating, let's just create a quick little apple shape, because we're going to do an apple. Oops. Then I'm going to use my smooth tool. I'm going to smooth this out a little bit. And what I can do is I can go to my gradient mesh tool. And if I click here, it's going to start giving me verticals. And if I click here, it's going to start giving me horizontals. And however many I want is to how, it's how many ever I need, right? And then I can manipulate these. I can start to move them around. That's how they're building like the nose, they're building this. It's just like creating a 3D tech, grid map, and then I can come in here and assign colors to all this. I could come in here and go, let's assign red, but now I'm going to use that as a base, and I'm going to start going to a lighter red for my, and you see how we can start to build a 3D object or the appearance of a 3D object. So we'll get into that later. Gradient. This is a blend tool. We'll get into that later. Okay, this is your color selection tool. If I bring in, and you guys are going to probably do a lot of this. If I bring in, actually, let's not do it that way. Hang on. I'm just going to take this image. I'm going to drag it into Photo or Illustrator, and there it is. So if I'm going to use this, like I might come in here and go, I like the sunset colors in this, let's say. So I might come in here and go, well, I'm creating my buildings or whatever it is. And I just take this. I'm going to grab all these sunset colors in here. Whatever it is. Yeah. So eyedropper tool. There's a lot of really good color tools in here that if you're, I think I said this already, but you might want to bring things in here once in a while and just kind of figure out a color scheme in here because you can do it very quickly. Okay. So there's that. We don't care about this graph thing. Symbols we'll get into later. Blend tool we'll get into later. It's easy. This is your artboard tool. I can click the artboard and see how it gives me that. And then I go, well, I want to have 2 artboards, or I want to have 4 artboards. So I can have all those within one document. One might be we used to do this a lot when I did fashion stuff. One might be just my silhouettes. The next one might be the color calls with all the PMS colors. The next one might, and then I'll export this as a PDF, a multi-page PDF. And it just makes my job easier because I can just export the whole thing and it's one file. Does that make sense? And you can also do this here. When you start your document, you can go File, New. You get this, and right here it says Artboard. So if I go 4, it automatically creates 4. What you got to be careful of though, when you go back to create a new document again, it usually, it kept the 4. So just make sure you go back to 1, and then it'll just remember the 1. And then we have these 2 things, and then this stuff down here we'll get into later. And then there's more stuff here. Usually you can adjust your stuff. Oh, we'll get into that later. Okay. The other thing is that I want you guys to work smart. So if you notice, I've got all my palettes over here in my little bin over here. Okay. We don't want to do like what I've done for 100 years until I started teaching class and realized how stupid I was being, is start doing this. And you start ending up with this kind of crap all over your desktop. Okay. I think probably everybody's done that. You guys are probably smarter than me, but I used to work like that forever. It was such a pain in the ass because you're always moving these things around. So anything you take, you can just grab it and pull it over here to the bar. And then you can just pull these up and down. Like I like this one up here, and arrange it. And then eventually we'll just create, new workspace. And then you can save that. And then like when you do start getting sloppy in the middle of a job, because sometimes you'll just do it absentmindedly, you can just go back over to your workspace and go back to Mike. I just always call it my name, and it'll go whoop, and it'll put everything back the way it's supposed to be. Okay. Okay. So when all that done, by the way, this is what's weird about Illustrator. Like in Photoshop, you guys all know, I think, if you have been in Photoshop, that you just go to the crop tool and crop your document, correct? Okay, so in Illustrator, you have to go, this is super weird. You have to have nothing selected, which means you can just take like your black arrow tool and click the board and you won't have anything selected. And then you have to go right up. And by the way, if I have something selected, if you notice up here in my, it changed to the tools for this rectangle, okay? Which means it's not gonna let me change it's not gonna let me crop the document, okay? So I'm gonna let go of that. I'm gonna click this. I just clicked the board. And look at this little button came up called document setup. I click that, I go to edit artboards, and then I get my, whatever you call it. What do you call it? New size, crop tool. Make sense? Is everything I'm saying make sense so far? Okay. And by the way, I know I'm burning through all this stuff. You're going to start using all these tools in a very stair-stepped way, and you're going to get all of them. Okay, let me put my sweater back on. It's getting cold in here. I'll do it off camera. I usually do 3 costume changes per class, just so you know. Okay. So let's go. Okay, here's another thing. I'm going to want you guys to give me stuff. Usually, sometimes I'll ask you to give me the Photoshop or the Illustrator file, okay? Most of the time, what I want you to do is, let's just put a shape here. Just for size problems, and most of the things I don't really need the whole file. Usually, sometimes I will. So let's make this whatever, this color. I don't like that. I don't like outlines for some reason like that. And I'm going to go now. Normally, I would go save, just like anything else. Pick where I want to put it. Actually, let's do this. And I would save it, right? But what I'm going to want you guys to do usually is a save as. And just go down here. Oh, okay, save as, I forgot. It gives me these options. So if you want to save as it as a PDF, you're not going to export. You're going to save as. Does that make sense? It's kind of weird to me. I don't know why they did it that way. And they also have these SVG documents. So, but look at what lives here. Illustrator EPS is a weird thing. It's an encapsulated PostScript file. It's an Illustrator file, okay? But and this is kind of weird. Like when I was working with China, they'd use this as a weapon, okay? So they'd go, I just told you guys, they love Illustrator files, right? Vector files. But because China's on sort of like when we're leaving work, they're coming into work, and we're coming into work, they're leaving work. So any question they ask, they buy a day. Does that make sense? So I would send them my files very locked down, but they'd want to buy a day. So I'd send them the file, the Illustrator file, and so it's a .ai file, okay? And then the next morning I go, hey, you guys got the file? You know, we'd have or whatever that night. I think we usually talk to them at night. We go, did you guys get the file and everything? This is 8 o'clock at night or whatever. And they'd go, can we get that as an EPS file? And I go, it's the same thing, because it is the same thing. And they go, yeah, but we need an EPS file. I go, it's the same thing, okay? And then I just found out it was a game, and they'd buy a day. So I'd go, all right, I'll send you the damn EPS file tomorrow. They just bought a day. And the next day they'd come in and go, can you send that as a blah, blah, blah? And they'd buy a file. But they use that EPS thing all the time, okay? And then if I sent an EPS file the next time, they go, can we get an Illustrator file? You know, it was just a stupid game they play, okay? They're the same thing. So, and if you want to do a PDF, it's here, okay? So what I'm usually going to want you guys to do is send me a JPEG. So you can just go File, Export, Export As. And then you can pick it here, PNG, JPEG, so on and so forth, correct? But it's an export, not a save as. Usually when you're like Photoshop and I go, send me a JPEG or your PSD, you just go to save as, right? Save as, and here's just those 4 or 5 files, and then export is everything else. Now, if I click, let's click JPEG and say export. And then, by the way, let's look at this real quick. Let's say I got all this crap, and you will. When you're working, you'll have all this crap all around out here on your pasteboard, right? Or your workboard or whatever. And I've got my image file is in here on the board, right? Well, I don't want all this crap out here. Does that make sense? So if I export it like this, if I go export, export as, and here's trace, yeah, and export as, and I go, and I'm not clicking use artboards, right? And I want to say JPEGs for the hell of it. I'm going to go export. Now it's going to give me this JPEG options. I don't want it is for the purposes of this class. We're going to do things RGB. So I'm going to drop RGB. What's the difference between RGB and CMYK? Josh?
It's like the cyan, yellow, magenta versus like red, green, blue.
Right. But why does that matter?
One's optimized for like printing.
Yes. It's not optimized. It's just the print. It's printing. Okay. And then RGB tends to be screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Print quality file is going to be 300 or above. Anything below that's probably they're not going to want. And sure as hell, don't ever send them a 72. 72 is basically for screen. Okay. That's sort of the ballpark of it. And then it's going to give you this quality thing. I don't know why I'd want anything less than 10. That makes no sense to me. Don't worry about this one right now. And then here I can change it to medium, 300, or I can go other and put it up at 600 or whatever I want to do. Okay. For now, I'm going to, for purposes in here, it'll be 72. Then I'm going to go, okay. And now it exported it, right? So I'm going to go here and then go here and then look, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. It got all that crap off the pasteboard, right? Which I don't want. I don't want to have to go clean up that pasteboard because that's you'll have all these little shapes over there and things you're doing and things you're trying and text and all that. So if I go here again, let's get rid of that. Because I just want my nice, simple illustration, this. So now I'm going to go File, Export, Export As, use Artboards, and go Export. And then we have the same thing, RGB, 72, hit OK. And now it only grabbed that. It cut everything off of the pasteboard. So it's just the image area. Does that make sense? Josh?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good.
What if you use multiple artboards? Does it get all of them or any specific
I
one?
think it'll just do all of them, I think. We'll check. I'll check. Okay. Now. I lost my train of thought. Oh, you got a Pathfinder palette here? I'll get into that later. I don't want to get into that yet. I don't like it when it starts combining these things. There we go. Okay, so if I take, and here, this is something that's really important that you're going to have to learn or get used to. If I want to take this, so I can go File, Place, Trace, and here's my, and okay, so look down here. See where it says link down here? Yeah? Here's what that means. I'm going to go place. You can also drag a file in just straight into the pasteboard. And it does this. I'm just going to click on here and there it is. Okay. So now there's my file. Let's get it a little smaller. So what this means is that, and this is really important, is Illustrator, when I put a file in there as a link, I'm going to save this. Okay, so Illustrator, when you place files into it, you know, raster files or whatever, not another vector file, because the vector, if you cut and paste something from vector, it's this vector. What it's doing when you open that file is it's going, it opens the file and it goes, and it goes and grabs that file and puts it in. Okay. If you are working on something like in class or whatever, make a folder, put your image in there and save your Illustrator file in the same folder. Okay. Now you can put it anywhere, but once you move that file, when Illustrator opens, it'll go, where's that file? Like you had it in that folder, it's not there anymore. And then you're going to either have to tell Photoshop or Illustrator to go find it, or if you went over to the lab to work on something, it's going to go, where's that file? And if you don't have the file, that's it. Does that make sense? It's going to go out and find it, okay? Because it's a placed thing. Now, so what that does is that if I go into like this same file now, let's open it up now in Photoshop because it's a raster file. I gotta remember not to. Shit. Let me replace this with a second file because I'm afraid I'm gonna screw this up if I don't. Hang on. So let's go and place the second one so we can just screw with it. Oh, here we go. Oh wait, it's on link. Now I'll tell you in a minute what happens when it's not on link. Now I'm going to open up the original file and I'm going to go, I want a big, and I just saved it. I'm going to close it and go back to Illustrator and see what it did. Some files are missing and been modified in the links panel. Would you like to update them? Yeah. So when it's linked, it will constantly update. Does that make sense? Now, the other option is you don't click that. So let's go up to our links window right here. It's showing this is a linked file. Okay. Now what I can do here is I can go, and this is doing the same thing as not clicking the link box when you create this. Does that make sense? Because when you don't click that, you create an embedded file. And it's going to be this. Oops, where is it? I have to select it. And right here, it says embed image. Okay, now it shows that little, like that little picture file icon. Do you guys see that? Now what that means is it's embedded. So now I can take this somewhere else because the file's embedded. It's embedded into the thing. The thing that sucks about that is sometimes somebody will send you something and you might need to do something in the original file. And it's kind of a pain in the ass. Okay. If it's just something you're working on, you're like, I just need that. It's my sketch or whatever. It's probably fine. Okay. I would always say though, when you're working with files for a client, keep the link active. Does that make sense? Gives you more options. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Actions we'll get into later. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so I'm gonna, oh, and here's the other one. Let's go back. Let's see what this says. Okay, so now this is not, now it's a linked file again. Here's what you got. Okay, and let's say that I got a bunch of fonts in here. They used to only have this in InDesign, which I never understood, and they finally put it into Illustrator. So if I have type in here and I got placed files, here's what used to always happen. It was and I hate this, is why I don't like fonts. I mean, I like fonts, but I can't stand the way they work. When you sent this, because a lot of clients would go, well, we want the active file. Okay, so because they might want to edit it or whatever. You go, okay, and then you have to go find all the fonts and put all the fonts in a folder and put all the images in a folder and all that crap, right? And if you had a lot of fonts in it, I don't care what you did, they would always come back and go, you didn't give us Helvetica new 42 standard. And you go, yeah, I did. And then you go in there and you go, that's the right font, but it's not. And I don't know how that all works. I don't get it. Then you go in there and you go, I guess it's this one then? It's called the same name. You send them that and they go, we need that font. That's not the right font. It was just a total nightmare. So what they finally built into it is you can go up here and go package. And I'm going to go, I'm going to put it in my trace thing and go choose. And it goes copy links, collect links in separate folder, relink, link dials to document, copy fonts, create report. Okay. I'm going to go package. And then it says package created successfully. To view package contents, press show. I don't care about that. Let's go. Okay. And then let's go back up here where I put it. I love this function, by the way. And go to work. Oops. Where'd it go? Oh, wrong one. And it's right here, test link folder. I could have named it something else. I click it. There's my fonts all nice and neat in a folder. There's my links all nice and neat in a folder. Here's my report that I can put stuff in if I want to. It's telling you test link, mode, CMYK color, US professional. It's telling you the color profile, the ruler inches, the artboard dimensions, everything that a printer would want without you having to do crap, right? And then your file. Make sense? That's the greatest thing in the world. Okay. Now, what I always suggest that you guys do is just always package your work. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's start talking about what we're going to do. We are going to bring in our Pokemon or whatever the hell that thing's called. I don't even like saying that word. So let's just say drawing. Okay. And I'm just going to go. Where the hell did it go? Oh, right here. I like to work big. I mean, in this kind of case, it just feels right. So what am I going to do? I have to click off of this because look at, there's our actual board size. You see that? I want to create this document so it's the same size as this image, right? So I'm going to click. What do I have to do? I have to click. So this is selected. So I'm just going to click on the board. Nothing selected. My document setup size comes up. I'm going to go edit artboards. I'm just going to pull this out a little bigger to give myself some breathing room. So there we are. Now, this is in our layers. Here's our layers. I'm going to rename this template. You name it whatever you want. And then I'm going to double click this this bar, not the word, not the thumbnail, the bar. And I can go right here and go to dim images to. I usually do 35%. That's not enough. Let's go 20%. That's a little better. I usually switch my line to red just so I can see it pretty good. And then as you see up here, you guys, right up here in my control bar, now I can fatten up that line if I want to. If it's, I'm going to put it at 2. 5-point round. I can change all that, blah, blah, blah. And then what I'm going to start doing, can I go get a cup of tea real quick? You guys? Okay, give me like literally 3 minutes. So we understand what we've done up till now, correct? Okay. So we got this on a layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this layer. So just like Photoshop, I can turn off the eyeball and it just goes away, or I can lock it. I'm going to lock it, and then I'm going to come down here, just like Photoshop. There's a page icon here. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to call it ink. A dink, a dink. Okay, so then look. Here's the trick to this project. And the reason I'm doing this is you have to start learning the pen tool, and you have to start learning how to use the pen tool, okay? You also have to learn where to separate your line. You'll make mistakes on this, it's fine, but correct them, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a dead line, and then we're gonna give it a really nice, beautiful, thin, thick, inked quality. Does that make sense? So what I get sometimes is people will go and they'll create a big outline around the whole thing, and they'll create a big outline here. And it's like, that's not going to work. You're not going to have control. Okay. So let's see how fat our line is. I'm going to go to my pen tool, just my regular pen tool, not this wackiness over here, and not any of this stuff down here, just the pen tool. I'm going to see how fat my line is. And by the way, see how it's got the handles and everything on it? If I want to get rid of that, I can go Command, gets my white arrow tool, click the board, and it'll just let go of it. Okay. I want to make it a little thicker. I think that's too thin. So I go up here in my control bar and go, let's go 4. That's probably fine. Or maybe 5. You gotta remember, this thing's pretty big. Okay, so there it is. Right here, I've got my line filled with red and a no fill. And I will start going like, okay, so here's the thing. Sometimes in a big gradual curve, you can make that curve in one fell swoop, okay? But here's the other thing. Once it goes here, like it's got this nice smooth curve, and then it's got whoop where it turns, okay? You're not gonna make all that in one travel, okay? So I'm gonna go click. Let's go a little closer. The reason I'm pulling out so far is I want to be able to pull my handles out a long way. So let's go here. Then let's go almost to the curve and then pull it. And that's not too bad. By the way, what we're trying to do is make this a better drawing. Does that make sense? And then I'm going to hit Command, and I got my white arrow tool, and click the board and let go. And then I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to go, okay, that's not too bad. And then I'm going to go look at that little kink right there. Whoever did that didn't know how to use the smooth tool. Josh. All right. So then you grab this, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Only now I'm going to go to here. That's the curve I want to make. And then I'm going to pull, and now I got a reasonable curve. You guys see that? Now I can also come in here and turn off, and I do this all the time. I turn off the template and make sure it looks okay. Because you'll be doing this, you'll go, wow, it looks great. You'll turn off the template and it's a mess. Like you'll just see all these crazy points and all this stuff. And now I'm going to go back to my pen tool. I'm going to grab this again, and I'm going to end right there because I know that's all the line I'm going to need there. And then I'm going to turn this off. It's not too bad. Okay. And the reason, and then I'm going to go, and then here's another thing you guys got to know. I want to do this line and this line and this line and this line by themselves. Okay. What's going to happen here though, if you notice what I was just doing, when I got near another point, like see that little star next to the pen tool? Now watch, when I get near a point, see how it goes to that slash? It's going, okay, so you want me to connect to that. So sometimes if I'm going here, see, it put a point like, it'll put a point like on the line. So what I'll do is I'll just select this line, and I'll go up here to Object, and I'll go Lock, which is just Command 2 right there, Selection Command 2. And now it's locked. So I don't have to worry about accidentally connecting to a point. And then when you want to unlock it, you just go up here and go Unlock All. Does that make sense? You're going to need to use that because I want to leave it locked for now, because now I want to go, I want to get this and this can probably be on the same line. I want to click away, and then I want to click this, come down here and see if I can make this in one travel. It's kind of a little funky. So maybe I'll just go to here maybe. And I'm going to do this deliberately. And then I'll finish it here. What's that going to create? And I know I'm off, so I get it. See that kink? It's funky, right? So we go here to our smooth tool, which is usually going to be the shaper thing. So you got to do this little pop-out menu and grab your smooth tool. It's the one with the little stripes on it. And I'm going to rub over this, and it's going to smooth it all out for me. Does that make sense? What you're going to have to do is you don't want everything connected because you want to be able to manipulate different lines. You don't want everything disconnected, and it takes a little experience, okay? And I know that's a bad line. I get it. This line right here. I'd still go in probably now, and I'd go grab this. Now grab my white arrow tool, touch this. Then I get my handles and I can adjust it. Like this is way too far over like that. And I'm going to need to smooth that a little bit. There it goes. And that's pretty right on. This needs, now I can take this tool later on. I can move this over closer to that if I need to. I don't want them to connect though. And this actually needs to come down here. These eyes, go ahead.
Is there a reason why you don't want them connected?
Because I want to be able to manipulate them independent of each other. Does that make sense? Who asked that?
It was me.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Like here's another example. I'm going to go here, here. Then I have to go Command, get my white arrow tool, let go, pick this up again. You know, maybe I can get it to come around like that. That's not too bad. And then come around here to stop here. Because, and again, let's turn this off for a second. Go, there's a kink right there. So I'm going to select it, get my smooth tool, smooth it out. Sometimes smooth tool will screw you up a little bit. Most of the time, they've improved it over the years. I'm doing a sloppy job again with it. Hang on. I probably wouldn't do it right there like that. I'd probably just make that curve better, but I'm just going to leave it like that for now. It's too dull. Hang on. So I'm going to get closer. Let me try and get closer. So let's go to here. Start here. Let's go all the way to here. That's probably what I should do. And then get up here. See that square off right there? That to me is just lazy. That's just what the machine did. You want a nice curve there. So I'm going to grab this again. And I'm going to complete it just to here. Get my curve the way I like it. And then I'll grab this and just pull this down now. That's better. Okay, I got a better, that's a much better curve. I can still smooth it a little. Now, the reason I did that is that if these are independent of each other, now I can come in when we're going to get to the other part of this and go, my light's to the left. I'm going to grab my width tool. I want this to be a little fatter on this side. Maybe a little thinner on this side. Oops, too thin. I don't want it that much. Hang on. That's not too bad. And then down here, I want to go into a dagger edge. That should curve right there, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to get those two handles. I'm going to pull that little nice little dagger edge in. Same thing here. And do you see how I'm starting to manipulate the line? If you're a line freak, this is like the greatest thing in the world. I'm going to fatten this up a little bit. you know, and so on and so forth. I could just do some cool stuff with it. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like this here,
Yeah.
this line, I'm not going to make this line and this line. I'm going to go, I want this line by itself. I want this line by itself. And then these overlaps to me are, I mean, those are super important. But what I got to pull this down so there's an overlap. Then I'm going to grab this. And by the way, whoever did this didn't, or she didn't take advantage of enough of these overlaps. They were just sloppy on it, which is why I picked this drawing, by the way. Because now when I get to this overlap, I can go with my tool. I can pull this nice, that's going to be a thicker line. I can pull this dagger in, or a rat tail, whatever you want to call it. And I can now manipulate this one. So that dagger and rat tail cleanly dies into the next one, nice thin out to thick. And then this one is also going to go a little thicker. And for sure, where you see it overlap, I really want that, that edge. So I'm going to grab this one a little bit, pull it up a little. So I don't want things not touching usually in this kind of case. I want to dagger this one a little bit. I want to dagger this one and this one. See how we're starting to get some nice line going, right? So what you want to do here is you want to start just with your dead line. Don't start manipulating the line till all the line work is done, okay? Like this. There's my dead line, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and obviously I bolded these up too much. I did it on purpose. Here's the rule of thumb with thin, thick line work, okay? The simple rule of thumb. Everything away, especially your shadow values, everything away from the light source, any place you got an occlusion shadow, like those two things meeting, like where a foot meets the ground, get a little thicker, something overlapping something else, like the edge of a roof, you might make that a little darker so it'll separate and pull forward. But most of it is, to start, if you're new to this, things away from the light are going to get a little thicker, and things that are sort of, you want to separate. It's light and separation. So if you notice, so what we want to do here is you want to determine your light source. In this case, I put it up to the upper left. Don't do what I see people do all the time with it. They're just starting to do this. And I go, where's the light at? They go, oh, I put it right here. I'm like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? Or they go, I put it like right here, like behind him. I'm like, don't do that. Make it, and in this case, it's pretty clear where it should go. It should go right there because that's the front facing thing and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Okay. And then everything's going to be away from the lights, getting thicker. And then like this line right here, you could argue, you go, well, why is that thicker? I would never go that thick with that particular line. Why is that thicker? Because I'm making a design decision where this big fin thing is in front of this thing. So yes, it's getting hit light, but I'm just going to make it a little thicker to separate it and pull it in front to make the drawing clear. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then here, this is, you know, this is in front of this shape. So I kind of want to hit that a little bit so that head pulls in front of the shape underneath it. Does that make sense? So all you got to remember is separation and, you know, basically your shadow values, right? And then you're making certain design decisions where you're like, that just looks cool. You know what I mean? And as long as it reads, it's cool. Like some of this is just design decisions, okay? This one is really important because that part of his back has to separate from that tail and all that stuff. Does that make sense? This is all I'm expecting on Monday, okay? And you're gonna run into some problems with it and things like that, and that's all fine, okay? But then we're gonna go to, base color. We'll go to sectional color. We'll go to shadow values, and we'll go to highlights, and then we'll go to specular highlights, which I don't have a whole lot on here. Does that make sense? It's super simple. By Thursday, you'll know how to do it. Okay. Or Wednesday.
Do you mind just doing the same thing you were showing, but like doing like the fingers, like something that's really round?
Say it
With the
again.
pen tool? Do you mind using the pen tool again, but doing on something really round like the fingers? How
Oh,
do you tackle that?
like these here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question, by the way. And then if you look here, by the way, so let's turn this off. Turn all this other nonsense off. Let's turn off lights, turn off that. Here's our line. So let's go back to our trace thing. Here it is. The way I'm going to handle these, because they're not. Now, there's a couple things you can do depending on what you're working on. None of these are them. Sometimes something's close enough to, let's say, an ellipse or something, where I can kind of start with this. Then I can go to my white arrow tool, click and activate it, and I can go, well, I'm going to flatten that off, and this is a little further this way. And then I can, maybe it's a little curved like that, and I can manipulate it from a primitive shape. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Was
Right.
that you, Kayla?
Yeah.
Did you ask that?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't really have any of those. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go, let's just do these three right here. Look at that. There's another point right there. You see that? It's sloppy. Okay. This gets cut off by this. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go, maybe I can get to here. I'm going to go right before that corner because I'm going to fix that. Now I'm going to go click. I'm going to go command, click off. Oops. And then grab it again. Then I'm just going to see if I can just kind of get to here. Not quite. So let's go about to here. I'm going to click off again just to start from a new thing. And then what I'm going to do is go, let's turn this off. And see how there's a little bit of kink in there?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to come in here and just, now there's not. I smoothed it. So that's our first one. Make sense?
Yep.
Now here's the other thing. There's only two things you got to remember when you're using the pen tool. So like if, I'll show it in you in a minute, hang on. You understand that most of the time to get my white arrow tool from the pen tool, I'm just hitting command, right?
Right. You
Okay. There's
hit
only two.
command and click away. Right.
You can
Or
do it
just
that
hit-
way, or I can go command and I can just click it and manipulate it.
Mhm.
I can do that. I can use this, whatever. Okay.
Mhm.
Because those tools are actually in here. If you go right here and pull this click out, that's just adding an anchor point. We don't care about that. But this anchor point tool and your pen tool, they're in there, but you're not going to keep going up to those. You're just going to use command, and then I'll show you why you use option. And that's it for this, okay? And for most things in Illustrator. So then I'm going to select that, go up to object, or go command 2, object. It says unlock all, which it shouldn't. Hang on. Lock, selection, command 2. So that's locked. Why? Because there's open points right here, and it's going to try and grab those points. I just don't want to deal with that. Then I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to go, maybe I'll start here. I'll go to here. See if I can get to here. Yeah. Go here. Grab it again. I think I can get to about here. Now I'm going to turn this off for a second, see how I look. It's got a kink in there. And here. Now I might have to manipulate a little bit, but that's a pretty smooth curve. Let's see. Not too bad. I can pop this down a little bit. don't know why it's not letting me grab that handle. Hang on. Sometimes it'll do that. I don't know why it does that. There it goes. You know, and I could pull it down here and manipulate it. Now I'm also going to grab this. I'm going to unlock this, go unlock all. And I want to get this one to meet right there. That's better. People do this all the time where they don't finish the lines that are supposed to finish. And it just, you know, why would you do that? And then I would do the same thing down here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I'm not good. You know, I'm going to start right there. Come here, you know, because they're overlapping and so on and so forth. Now, what I want you guys to understand is like, once you get used to this, and the other good thing is you're going to know the pin tool really well, which is going to help you in every program. But once you get used to Illustrator and all the different tools we're going to start using, it is monster crazy fast. It's insane how fast it is. Okay. Just the way you build things in this thing is just so much different, where you're just like, like I said, punching things out, creating this. You already have this shape. You make this, you do that. You do that. Okay. Now, so that's going to be our start. And then you're going to go. So once I have my deadline, I want to copy this. And again, the only reason I'm using red initially was just so I could see it. Okay. So I want to select all of this. I got to go up here and make sure everything's unlocked. See, it's not. I want to unlock all of it. I want to turn my templates off. I want to go, oops, let me lock that back in. I'm going to go lock all this, or I could go Command All or Command A. And then I'm going to go, I want to make sure it's all unlocked. It's fine. I've got my light source up here. If you want, use your round tool, make a little, I do this sometimes if I want to remember where my light source is, and just give it that if you want, if you want to, right? And then, oh, that's what I was going to do. Let me lock this. I'm going to go all, and then I want to switch this. Look, it's got a fill for some reason. See that question mark? I'm going to get rid of that. So I don't want any confusion. And then there's probably different colors in the line work in here, and that's why it's confused on the line. It's showing that question mark. So I want to change this back to black. And this is another thing I do sometimes. I go, that's really thin. I'm going to fatten the whole thing up a little bit. So I want to have a little bit of meat to it. And then I'm going to go in here and start going, okay, get my width tool right there. And I'm going to start manipulating all these lines based on where my light source is. And okay, here's another thing. If I go in and I want to readjust a line, like this one's too fat. Number one, don't put your pasteboard or your board that close together. I'm going to go to Document Setup, Edit Artboards, give this thing some breathing room because that's just way too close. If I want to readjust this and I go back to my width tool and I go over this and go there, see how it, okay, look, if I do that, it's going to add another point. Or if I start pulling here, see how it pinched? Because I need to go find the original. There it is. See how it locked over it? And there's my handles, and I can readjust it. But I have to go back to the original point. You just go over it and it'll pop up. Okay. If you go somewhere else, you'll create a pinch. Does that make sense? Now I can come up here and adjust this. You know, and then I go, okay, this isn't quite fat enough. Maybe I want a really nice fat line in here. I probably would actually. I want there. So look, I got to go back here, let it, boom, there it is. And there it is. Oops. See, I grabbed the bottom. I got to lock this. Got to lock that line because it's grabbing it. I don't want that line. And then I'm going to adjust this. And I just start going through. And see, you can already see how it starts to get punchy, which I love that. Okay. I mean, line is I just love line. And then look, there's things in here. Look at this one. It's over. I want to pull that. So I'm going to grab that one point at the end and just pull it back. I'm going to grab this one. And I do this before I ever start doing my line work. Hold this one in there. And this is going to taper so you won't see that little whatever. This is sloppy right here. So I'd go over and do this before I actually started doing my thin, thick line. You know, and I can do things like this too on the mouth. I can grab the width tool and maybe thicken it. Oops. Thicken it on the corner just to give it a little more interest. This for sure should get thicker. Oops. And we'll just build a nice, I have some, I'll find them. I have some really good student ones. But does that all make sense?
Yes.
You will get the bitchinest, like thin, thick, inked drawings out of that. It's awesome. Okay. And I can't even tell you, I never even meet students who know how to do this. It's weird to me because it's pretty simple. Oh, and by the way, if you want, I don't know the name of this character. I forgot the name of it. It's something really dumb. But anyway, hang on. You can go if you want. I don't care what color you make this thing. But there's this original one if you want that. And you can just sample the colors off it. I don't care about that. I don't care about the colors or anything. Okay. And I don't want color on Monday. I'll show you color on Monday. Okay. All I want is a really nice thin, thick line drawing. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yep.
Yes.
NASA, by the way, look. NASA. Questions?
By Monday, right?
Oh, one more thing I want to show you. Yeah, on Monday. I'll put it up under assignments. Okay, so if I go, let's do this. If I go here, trying to find the right way to do this. Okay, so if I move this line, see how it moves both lines like that? Okay, so what did I do? I had my pen tool, and then I go my white arrow tool. I click away, and I click off the point, so it'll activate all of them. And then I go, okay, it's moving everything. Do you see that? I might not want that. So the next thing you do is instead of using my white arrow or my command, I go option, and it gives me a corner tool. So I can manipulate just this side. Does that make sense? So the only two things you got to remember when you're in your pin tool mode and you're doing this, if you want to just like, instead of having a nice smooth curve you're manipulating, you go, no, I want it to just do that. You go to option, which is this. It's the corner tool. It's this one right here. Okay. But you don't want to go up there and keep grabbing it all the time, right? And it's very simple. You're just going command or option when you're in your pin tool. Does that make sense? You're going to need that in this thing. Okay. What I'm trying to get you to fairly quickly, and you will, like when I do that, like when I started teaching this, I really had to slow down and go, how am I doing that? Because I don't even think about it. Okay. And you won't either very quickly. Okay. And I think it's an advantage because there's so many people who, and not just in Illustrator, they just don't know how to use the pen tool. And part of it is because like when they're in Illustrator or Photoshop, they're using all kinds of other things and they're avoiding it. And a lot of times you can see it in their work where you're like, why didn't you just use the pen tool on that? That is super sloppy. You know what I mean? And they don't know how, right? So when you go in and pin tools in this, it's in every program you could think of. I mean, it's just in every program. You go into Premiere, you want to make a unique shape mask or something like that in your video edit, you need the pin tool, okay? InDesign, Illustrator, photo, I mean, it's all over the place. Not just Adobe either, it's in everything. Okay, did that make sense? And everybody's going to do a killer line drawing?
We're all going to become Pokemon masters.
No. You're going to become line masters. Yeah?
Yeah.
Masters of line. By the way, Kayla, again, if you have something, you know, that you think you could do this with, I'm fine with that. Okay. Just make sure it's a nice, it doesn't have to be some hyper finished drawing, because like this drawing is a pretty simple drawing. I'd actually prefer it's fairly simple, but just, you know, nicely balanced and things like that. Okay.
And you probably already said it, but to turn in for Monday, do you want the JPEG or the Illustrator
I want the
file?
JPEG. And then when we're having the conversation, if I feel like there's something I need to actually give me the packaged file. Okay.
Okay.
You'll go up to, actually for this, yeah, just give me the package file. Yeah.
Okay.
Which will be the little folder. It'll create that little folder with your image, and then just throw that onto the drive.
Where's the package again? Sorry.
Okay, so just remember when you go up to save,
Save.
here's save as, down here package.
Oh, okay.
And just the way you remember it is you go, packaging is really saving. It's just it's just saving all the stuff. So it lives where where save lives.
Okay.
Right. I know everybody's going to run into roadblocks with this, you know, really play with it, manipulate it and all that stuff. And then I'll help you with whatever roadblock you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I will render this video and get it up as quick as I can onto YouTube. And then I'll put the Zoom, the YouTube, and the folder that you're going to drop your stuff. You'll click it, make sure you're signed into Google, and you will drop it in there on Monday. Drop it in at least 1/2 hour before class. 1/2 hour before class, I shut it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
No more questions? Everybody's good? Yeah, let me see how many people I got there. Okay, I think we're okay because I think I already got the 13. Hang on. What are we at? We're 10 minutes. Oh no, I didn't get one. Hang on, I'm missing somebody. Hang on. So let me get this. Okay. Sorry. Okay, if you guys are ready, I'm going to let you go if you don't have any more questions. Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got one.
Okay.
How do you get package to work? I found it, but it's unhighlighted. It's like not letting me.
Just because you don't have anything in the folder or in the file.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Like as soon as I do, I don't even know if it would do that. Let's see if it'll do it with this. Oh, hang on. Let's go to a different one. Yeah, let's just do this. What is this? Yeah, let's use this. Let's go. Okay, the reason it's grayed there, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
There's nothing for it to package. This is a native Photoshop or Illustrator object. So it doesn't need to package it.
Oh.
As soon as I put a font in there or a image, then it needs to package it. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So packaging is just when you have link, because sometimes you're just creating an image without any sort of placed objects or any of that kind of stuff, and it's not going to need to package it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right, you guys, go. I'll see you on Monday.
Have a good one.
Thanks, you
See
guys.
ya. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.